Well, hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. Jiu-Jitsu 2000 here today. I'm back, and I hope you guys are doing fantastic out there. I got my notes in hand. Once again, we're going to talk about Alone. We're going to be on Season 9, Episode 3. This was a fantastic episode. Before I get started, I want to give a quick shout out to Ethan. Last time I looked at his channel, he was at 496 subscribers. I'll post a link in the description box down below. So if anybody out there wants to go check out Ethan, please do. And if you like what you see, he could use more subs. And if not, that's cool too. So we're going to start off with episode 3. The quote comes on the screen. It's a quote by Gandhi, and it says, "The future depends on what we do in the present." I think that's a very accurate quote, because things that we do today can absolutely have an impact on things of tomorrow. I love this quote. For those of you who don't know who Gandhi was, he was an Indian lawyer. He was a political and spiritual leader. He authored several books. He was assassinated at 78 years of age in 1948, unfortunately. So we're going to get started on this episode, and we're going to rewind a little bit back to day 12. 10 people left. We're talking about Jesse. And it's a little bit after 9 o'clock in the morning. It's 37 degrees outside Fahrenheit. She's deciding to work on her long-term shelter. It's raining outside, but that's not stopping her. She's gonna go out there and get some work done, which I really give her a lot of credit for. And I really like her idea of using live standing trees to incorporate into her shelter. So I thought that was cool. She's not cutting down things to make poles. She's not digging holes to set poles. She's using live trees as the poles. I thought that was very, very smart. Couple things that I noticed though is she's cutting very large logs, and she's moving a lot of dirt around. She's carrying 3 logs. There's a shot where she's coming up. She's got 3 logs carrying them, and they're like 35 pounds apiece. I think I did the math. That's 105 pounds of logs that she's carrying in one pass. I mean, she's a tough woman. Tough woman. But moving all this dirt and these big logs that she's cutting, it looks like it's a big calorie expenditure in her shelter build. I don't know how that's going to turn out for her. You know, I hate seeing people go too crazy on their shelter builds because it's just tearing down the calories. And again, we're in a real life game of Hunger Games. So I don't know what to think about that. And she says that her mom was a single parent and her mom was a great fisherman. So I'm thinking that Jessie, not only being a SERE instructor, but the influence of her mother, she's probably gonna have some fishing tricks up her sleeve, I'm guessing. So we're gonna move forward, still on day 12. It's a little bit after 1 o'clock. We're talking about Igor. He's eating some seaweed soup, which I think is very cool. He's got a lot of water in there with that, and he's bringing in some material into his body. I think this is good. It's gonna give the stomach something to process. It's gonna give him a bowel movement. It's gonna help out. He said that he hasn't caught any fish yet, and at this point he's lost around 19 pounds since he's been dropped out there. He's working on a log cabin, and it's kind of similar to what we just saw in Jesse. Is he's got a lot of logs, and he's doing a lot of work with cutting logs and stuff. And he had some wet, damp moss, and he decided to put a floor of logs down. And I thought that was actually smart, even though it was a calorie expenditure. I thought it was smart because the more he stands on that floor, it's going to just bring water up and he'll be standing in a pool. But the fact that he's putting logs in there, I mean, it's a trade-off. You got calorie expenditure versus, you know, and I don't know what kind of locations he had at his disposal. I mean, is this the only place he could make a shelter where he had equal access to all the resources that he needed? Or maybe there might have been a better location or something for him to put his shelter. I'm not sure. But I thought what he was doing to solve that problem was smart, even though it cost some calories. He sees a grouse and he does something very impressive. And he does something that I think I would have probably done. He hits the grouse with his silky saw. And I don't know if he threw the saw or if he just whacked it. But in either case, the silky saw got the grouse. And then he said something that really touched me. And he said, "Thank you, God." Something that simple, but yet that powerful. So I thought that was really cool of Igor to give credit where credit's due. Ultimately, God is in control of everything out there, right? So let's move forward. We're on day 13. We're talking about Adam. It's about 10:30 in the morning. He's chopping grass. He's going to add it to the clay. He's going to make some cob. The grass is a good additive to clay. If you try to use clay, his goal is to make a fireplace inside of his shelter, a clay hearth, if you will, a chimney. And the grass, if he was to use just clay alone, there's potential that clay would probably not have anything to bind it together, anything to hold it together, no temper, I guess. So he's using this grass to serve as a bond to keep the clay together. And it kind of reminds you of like when they're going to put stucco on a building, you use chicken wire, right? And the chicken wire holds the stucco together. It's kind of similar here. That's what he's using the grass for. I thought that was very smart. I like his shelter. Of all the shelters out there so far, my personal favorite is his. I think his shelter is awesome. And then he says something very smart, something that I completely agree with. He said, "I am on a marathon pace." He's not in a sprint, he's in a marathon. For the chimney, he decided to take some vertical pieces of wood and weave some other pieces, making a wattle. And then he's putting the clay, the cob, on that wattle, and he makes a really nice looking chimney. Very cool. He puts clay on the wattle. Then he hears a grouse, and he throws a stick at the grouse. He wants to not risk losing more arrows, so he uses a throwing stick. And I don't think he got the grouse. I think he missed. I think he might have hit close and the grouse flew off or something like that. So again, it was smart because he was saving arrows by using a stick. I think that was very wise of him. You can always find another stick. You can't, arrows are hard to make. Not that it's impossible, but it's not an easy thing when you got factory made arrows that shoot straight and stuff like that. He says he's going to hang on to the arrows that he has. His goal is to use them in a bear hunt, which I think is very, very smart. And then it gives a shot of his chimney. It looks really nice. Looks great. And then on the top of his shelter, he put a flap of tarp over it to keep water from coming down on top of the chimney, which I thought was very smart. Very, very smart, because in the event that it rains and the top of that chimney might not get hot enough to make that clay super, super hard or turn it into a ceramic, so to speak. So the fact that he put the tarp over it keeps the rain off of it, keeps it together. I thought that was very smart. Looks really good. So he lights a fire, and the chimney is drawing well. He doesn't have any smoke in his shelter. And in one of the scenes, I noticed there was a very tiny stream of water flowing behind him. And it made me wonder, is that drinking water? Is that just rain runoff? Or is that a stream? Or is it fresh water? Could it be used? I mean, the whole water question came to my mind when I saw that. So we're moving forward. It's still day 13, 12:40 in the afternoon. We're talking about Jessie. She's eating bunch berries. She said she might gather some more tomorrow. I think that idea of gathering while you can and getting those resources while they're available, I think that's a very good idea. Before a bear comes in and ransacks that berry patch, I think it's very smart to have that hunter-gatherer kind of mindset. You know, the resources and things are going to change as this experience goes longer and longer. So the berries that are available today might not be there next week. So for her to say, I'm going to go get them tomorrow, I would have probably tried to get them right then and there if it was me. Which reminds me of a video that I did recently. I was out brass hunting. I saw a bunch of 270 brass. I didn't pick it up because I didn't have a container to put it in. Thought, well, I'll come back tomorrow and I'll get that 270 brass. There was probably 60 rounds of it. So I went home, came back the following day. There was 2 vehicles out there shooting. And I thought, oh, no problem. I'll just wait till they leave and then I'll go pick up that brass. Well, long story short, the vehicles left. I went back out there. Well, they happened to be brass hunters too. So it just kind of goes to that quote that we saw at the beginning of this episode. The things you do today will affect tomorrow. So her gathering the berries right now, I think would be a good call, because ultimately I lost out on a bunch of good brass thinking that they would be there tomorrow. You know, Jessie at this point has lost 15 pounds and she hasn't seen any grouse, but she sees lots of squirrel activity. So she decided to set some snares on a tree that was down, and I thought that this was very smart. There's a down tree, it's got a lot of branches and stuff, and there's a little area where them squirrels can run, and it's channeled by those branches, and she's put a bunch of snares on that tree. It's like a whole snare. I mean, it's like the squirrels running the gauntlet, you know. They're bound to get caught. The participants can choose 2 pounds of snare wire as one of their items if they choose to. And in total, I've noticed that she set 15 snares. That's very, very cool because that is passive hunting. She doesn't have to burn any calories after she sets those snares. They're sitting there working 24/7, whatever she's doing. Those snares are gonna have the potential to produce, and they take 0 calories to do so. So I thought that was very smart. And the number of snares that she put out there, you know, she didn't just put 1 or 2, she put 15. I thought that was very, very smart of her, because the way snares are, when you put high volume of numbers of snares, that heightens your chances of success. So I thought that it was very, very smart. And it wasn't, just barely over an hour later, she had already gotten a squirrel. Crazy. And then there was a little annotation that come on the screen, and it said it takes about 270 calories that you'll get out of a squirrel. That's what you'll consume. So she went down to the water. She's cleaning the squirrel. I thought that was smart. And then I noticed that her pot had a handle. So she had like a 2-quart pot with a lid and a handle. I just noticed that. And she had a tripod with I think there was a fire or something. And it was a nice setup that she had. So we're moving forward. It's day 14. It's the morning of day 14. About 6:30 in the morning, we're talking about Benji. He's got this beautiful shot of the sunrise. Beautiful shot. He's going to go build a debris hut. He said something that kind of threw a flag up for me. He said he didn't want a raised bed. He said he likes sleeping on the ground. He said his back and shoulders don't hurt as much when he does this. And the only thing I could think of was heat loss through conduction. I like raised beds. I like at least some kind of boughs or some kind of material, some duff to lay on to break that insulation factor. I don't know what he's doing there. So then he starts on the shelter, and earlier than he had planned, because remember before, I think it was on episode 1, he said something about, I'm going to be under a tarp for at least 30 days. So here we are on day 14. So ahead of schedule, he's already starting on his shelter, which I thought was very smart of him. I really thought that was a good call. Earlier than he had planned, he hears a squirrel, he takes a shot, he nails the squirrel. So Benji has shown us that he's a good shot with this bow. He knows what he's doing. He got the squirrel. He's got the lid of his Dutch oven, using it like a frying pan, I guess. And he says he feels good. He says, I'm not a big organ eater, but he eats them anyway. I thought that was smart. He's bringing in nutrients into his body. He's lost 19 pounds at this point, and he says, I can't wait to see the snow. I can't wait to see the ice. I can't wait to see this place try to break me. I thought that was interesting. He says, I'm going to give it right back. I'm sticking it out until I'm the last one here or pulled. You know, in the last episode, I talked about the power of words, the power of things coming off of your mouth, and he's saying things that are powerful. I think that it's powerful because he's saying positive things like, I'm gonna be the last guy here. You know, we'll just see how that plays out, but I think his mindset is good. I think his head's in a good place. So we're moving forward, day 14, 10 o'clock in the morning. We're talking about Jessie. She builds the walls. She builds the roof. It looks very nice. The construction is beautiful, but the shelter looks large. That concerns me a little bit. There's an annotation that comes on the screen and it says she's burning 375 calories per hour of work. That's a lot of calories. It's a big shelter, calorie expenditure here, and I think a big structure like that is going to be hard to heat. You might have a big house, but if it's a cold big house, what is it really going to do for you? We're in a survival game here, and we need to stay warm. So smaller shelter, in my opinion, is going to conserve more calories because you're not sitting there shivering all night long. You know, I just think that a smaller shelter is going to hold the heat better. It's going to reflect that heat back in a little more effectively than a larger shelter. But it does look very nice. It looks very solid. It looks like she's got it going on with her building skills. So we're moving forward to Juan Pablo. We're on day 14 still. It's about 2 o'clock. He misses the squirrel. He decides he's going to go on a short trek, a short hike, and it's rough country. And he says there's no sign of any rabbit droppings. Then he sees a bear track. He'd love to hunt a bear. So we've got him and Adam both looking at bears. He says he's going to hang food in these cans, some of those cans that he found. And he decides to take one of the cans, he cuts a hole in the middle, and he had a nail that he had found, and he makes a bell, so it will be like an alarm. So if the bear comes close to the food, trips the wire, he's going to hear that bell going off, knows that a bear might be trying to get into his little food stash that he's got up. He's got like paracord up over a branch, and he's hanging his food up. From the shot that it showed, in my opinion, it didn't look near high enough. But this could play into his hunting as well. For example, you know, he might have put some bait out there for the bear. Bear comes, he hears the bell ring because the bear's trying to get it. It's low enough to the bear has a shot at getting it. So maybe Juan Pablo is going to come put an arrow in that bear. You know, it could be a hunting strategy by setting a trap for this bear. I don't know what he's thinking, but I think he knows what he's talking about out there. There's an annotation on the screen that says 6 ounces of bear meat has 22 grams of fat. And that's true. Bear fat is bear meat rather, is a very greasy, fatty kind of meat. My grandfather hunted a lot of animals in his life, so I've ate all kinds of game, and bear meat is delicious, but it's very fatty. So it's a good meat if they can get one. So we're moving forward. It's day 15, 9 o'clock in the morning. We're talking about Adam here, 38 degrees Fahrenheit. He has a piece of wood. He used his Leatherman and he made a vise. He's going to make some flies for fishing. He took the insert out of his shoe. He cut a little piece of the foam off of it. So he used some of that shoe insert to make floating flies. And then he also made some little sink. So he goes fishing. He's kind of talking about his parents a little bit and kind of talking about what he's going to do if he was to win the money. He said his parents are on a fixed income. They only make like $20,000 a year. So he's saying, you know, if I win, I'll be able to help them. But he doesn't have any luck fishing. He lost one of the flies as he was backcasting. You know, he wasn't forward putting it out in the water. He was actually getting ready to throw it out there, and on the backcast, he lost one of his flies. He looked around, he couldn't find it. And then he does a cute little thing where he's kind of dancing in front of the camera. And even though he struck out on fish, which would normally demoralize a person's emotional state, he stayed positive and he was doing this little dance thing. And again, I think that's important because it keeps his morale up, even though he just struck out on fishing. So very good for him for having that kind of mindset. So we're moving forward, still on day 15. We're a little bit after noon, almost 1 o'clock, talking about Jessie. She's sitting out sunbathing, capturing vitamin D. And I thought that was very smart as well. It really does a lot for your mental state. It really does. It helps you stay happy. It helps you stay focused. It helps you in a lot of ways. She decides to go check her snares, and she got another one. It's little. It's a small one. She grabs a stick. She's getting ready to dispatch this small squirrel, and this mama squirrel comes up. And this got me like almost to tears. The mama squirrel comes up, and there's the shot showing the little baby squirrel caught in the snare, and the mama's right there like crying. Like, I mean, literally crying or trying to save her baby or whatever. And I like what Jessie did. She said, "I'm so sorry, sweetie. It's hard." You know, a lot of people that go to the grocery store, they don't see where food comes from, where meat, you know, they go buy Cornish game hens. They don't know where that comes from or what impact that has. Or they buy a package of steaks. They don't realize that, but when you're hand to mouth like they are out there, you know, and then like that experience that Jessie had, that would kind of tear a person up, I would think. I think as a person maybe gets older in life, they learn that life really is valuable. Not to say that anybody out there didn't value life, because we all do. So we're moving forward. We're still on day 15. It's a little bit after 3 o'clock. We're talking about Carrie Lee. She's washing her hair. She said, "My goal is to get in the shelter." And it looks like the cross between a teepee and a lean-to. She's got a digging stick and she's moving lots of dirt. Looks like a lot of work. Shelter does look nice. So this shelter that she's making is just like Jessie's. It's a big, elaborate, beautiful shelter, and the balance comes into play again, where I'm thinking about, is that shelter going to be worth the calorie expenditure and all the work that it takes to make it? Is the payoff or the trade-off going to be worth it? And I just don't know. She decides to make a fire inside the shelter, and in my point of view, from what I could see on the television screen, I got a little nervous about that because it looked like there was open flames fairly close to the tarp. Or, you know, if the fire would have gotten much bigger, I think that it might have started maybe melting the tarp a little bit or something. I don't know how that's going to unfold. I hope that it doesn't have problems. She has a tripod over the fire, and she's got her Dutch oven on the tripod. And she said something very smart. She said, now that my shelter's done, all I have left is food. And now I can focus my days on that. And I think her strategy is actually pretty smart as far as getting shelter done, and now it's food, you know, shifting gears on what she's going to use as priorities. I thought that was smart. Moving forward, we're on day 16. We're talking about Adam. It's about 10 o'clock. He takes a shot, and he says, nailed it. You know, there's this scene, he's drawn his bow back, and, you know, you don't know what he's shooting at. And then he lets the arrow go, and he says, nailed it. Makes me think that he got something, you know. But no, he didn't. He wasn't hunting. All he's doing is target practicing, which I thought was very smart. He's keeping that skill alive because there was a previous season, I'm wanting to say it was Dave Nessia, I think season 3, it got to the point where he couldn't even string his bow, and then he couldn't hunt. So the fact that Adam is staying active on his bow daily, I think it keeps that skill alive. So I thought that was very smart. He said that the fishing spot that he was using is dried up. He wants to focus on a bear, which I thought was smart. And then he finds some mushrooms. They're full of magnesium and zinc, copper, iodine. And he says, I don't want to just sit in my shelter. He said, I'd rather hunt. He'd rather be active. Then he sees a grouse. He takes a shot. He has a blunt tip arrow. He takes a shot at the grouse and he gets a grouse. He didn't skin the animal. He plucked the animal, which means all the fat and all that stuff that's inside of the skin stays on the bird. So when he cooks it, he gets to consume all that. If you skin the bird and you remove the skin and the feathers and all that, then you're removing the fat, and that's something that he needs. So he's in his shelter now, and he's stuffing the body cavity with cranberries and mushrooms, and it just looks delicious. He cooks it in his Dutch oven. Looks fantastic, but it looks like it's dry. It looks like the bottom of the Dutch oven didn't have any moisture, so all the fat and stuff that dripped off, I think, just dissipates out into the atmosphere. You know, it just drips and hits the bottom of the Dutch oven and just turns into ash. So maybe with some water, keep the nutrients in that water, you can make yourself a broth and still cook. Plus your meat's going to be nice and juicy, and then you drink that broth and you get everything that's in that bird. So we're moving forward, day 16. We're talking about Benji. It's a little bit after a little bit after 2 o'clock rather. He's catching fish. He builds a fish cache. So he's got a couple fish and he puts a couple small rocks on it. I don't know how effective that's going to be. I thought it was smart to do that, but I also wonder, you know, a bear can just paw that rock out of the way and get those fish. So I don't know what's going to happen there. He sees a beaver trail, and then he sees a beaver. Takes a shot with his bow. He misses. The beaver kind of flaps and kind of goes down, and then the beaver reappears, and he takes a second shot, and it looks like he hits the beaver. We're not sure. The beaver, and it was a broadhead arrow that he used on the beaver, and the beaver, when the second shot, you know, and it looked like a hit to me, and it looked like there was water flapping and stuff, and then the beaver dove. So I don't know what's going on. The beaver went down, and he can't find the beaver. So I don't know what's going to happen. And I also don't know if he recovered all of his arrows or not. I think he did, but then he says that he'll come back tomorrow. So the show ends kind of leaving us hanging on, did Benji get the beaver? I think he did, because I hope he did, for the sake of the beaver and for the sake of Benji. But that's really the end of this episode. It was a fantastic episode. Folks, I want to say thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave your comments down below. I love reading them. I hope you guys have a beautiful day. We'll see you next time on episode 4. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now.